Joining me on the Crispin Flintoff show, we've got Annie and Monday. How are you doing, Annie?
Hi, Crispin. How are you? I'm doing perfectly well. Thank you very much for asking.
Good to see you again. And Monday, good to see you too. How are you?
Hey, I'm okay, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Now, the reason you're both on the show is because you were both arrested at the national demonstration in London that was very controversial because of how many arrests were made and the way that it was handled by the police. We had a whole show on it pretty much last week, um, but we didn't cover every arrest because you couldn't. There's so many. But Annie, could you tell us a bit about your arrest last week? Was it
Okay,
last week? Or was it the week before? I can't even remember when it was now.
half ago now. So so what happened was I was actually arrested around Whitehall, so it wasn't even at Trafalgar Square. And it was just as everybody was setting off. So I would think maybe 45 minutes before the bulk of the arrest started happening. So for my situation, it was slightly different. I actually was with some different groups chanting, and then I walked towards where the Zionist side was, where they had been cordoned off on a side road. And it's at that point when I was there with some friends that I started to notice that the police officers were talking to each other and looking at myself. And then they were going back to the Israeli side and having a conversation. So I realized, and people around us, including stewards, realized at that point that the police were watching me. I watched a police officer make a telephone call, look at me, speak to his other officers. And that's when I decided that if I was going to be arrested, it wasn't going to be right in front of the Israeli counter protesters. I was not going to allow that to happen. So I walked away further down towards Whitehall. Now, I must also add that they didn't even come to arrest me immediately. They spent about 30 to 40 minutes making a semicircle around me, filming me, watching me, talking about me. And I honestly do feel that they wanted me to panic and react. I think they wanted me to cause a scene and then, you know, they could create a more violent and aggressive arrest. Now, that didn't happen. When they did approach me to arrest me, I was extremely calm. And my arrest was very, very calm. They came over and they said, we are arresting you. And it was absolutely nothing to do with the protest. Absolutely nothing. I was actually arrested in regards to an action that had happened 3 months previously. And like I said, it was an extremely calm and slow arrest. And they
Right,
just
can you just say that again? You were not arrested for anything to do with the national demo, breaking rules of the demo or marching in the wrong way or whatever it is. You were actually arrested for something you'd done 3 months before.
Exactly. And I remember when members of the public were saying that, they were like, why have you waited 3 months to arrest her? Why are you arresting her today at the national demo? So I do wonder if that has anything to do with adding more statistics to the arrests on the day, because the higher number of arrests, the more you can create a fake narrative that we're not peaceful protesters. So there's that element to it. And also the fact that you it was absolutely nothing to do with what I was doing at that moment in time. It was for an action that happened at the JW3 Centre, which was 3 months previously. Absolutely nothing to do with the day. And I'm not the only one that I know of that was arrested for a similar situation. So again, it adds further statistics to the 77 arrests, doesn't it?
So the police were picking up people that they'd identified from protests 3 months before.
Mhm.
I mean, they identified. I mean, that's the question. I mean, who identified those people 3 months before? How were they getting these names? We talked before about doxing. I mean, is this a case of them getting information from Zionists?
So this is the interesting thing. I mean, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I think it was all a setup. So as you know, we did the JW3 protest, and that was against the Haaretz newspaper, which is a Israeli newspaper. So we were actually protesting against a conference that was being held there. And Tony Blair was supposed to be in attendance, an ex-prime minister of Israel, several journalists, writers. So it was a political conference and we protested it. And unfortunately, after the protest, several of us, including Monday and myself, we were featured in articles in the Times newspaper. We were doxxed all over X. I've had my full name doxxed. I've had people turn up where they thought I worked to hold a protest with banners with my name all over it. That's how extreme it got. Now, those same sites kept tagging in the Metropolitan Police. And since then, members of the local community, a member of the local community that wasn't happy with the JW3 protest has actually commissioned a King's Council to look further into the JW3. And what's happened is they've said to the Met Police as well, you did not police that protest well enough. You did not do your job. So now, retrospectively, they are arresting people 3 months later and at the national demo. So that's what's happening here. And it's all to do with the constant pressure of the doxing, the constant pressure of the newspaper articles. Then they're getting, King's Councils involved to say, Met Police, sorry, you didn't do a very good job. You should be ashamed of that. They've had Suella Braverman talking about it in Parliament. And then strangely enough, at the exact same time that they decide that they want to portray peaceful demonstrators as aggressive and have a statistic of 77 arrests and use it as a way to stop further protests. I mean, you've seen Sadiq Khan now saying, we have no need to protest. You see Mark Rowling going to the Board of Deputies and saying, I did a fantastic job. It was the most ardent and strictest rules that we've ever imposed on the protest. So this is all connected. Everything about this is connected. It's a shutting down of activists. It's a shutting down of journalists, of content creators, of people that are known in the movement.
So Monday, I believe you were at that JW3 protest as well. I mean, and you were doxxed in the same way, in the same article as Annie. So you were arrested on the national demo. Was that the cause of your arrest?
So initially, I was arrested at the BBC for breach of a Section 12 because I did a protest with Youth Demand, and we were all arrested under Section 12s and 14s. And I thought that that was going to be the extent of my arrest. And then at 4 a.m, while I was in custody, an officer came over to my cell and woke me up to tell me that some information had come to light and that I was being rearrested for public disorder under the title of inciting racial hatred against Jewish people for chants I'm alleged to have said at the JW3 protest last year. So, yeah.
You're in custody. They come in and they say, we're rearresting you.
Yeah.
And then how long do they hold you for over the time you'd already been?
So they held me for about another maybe 10 hours-ish, because originally, the offence I originally was arrested for, I could have been bailed, because when they rearrested me, they also bailed me for the other offence. So I could have left if not for this rearrest. But they kept me all the way until I feel like I've been in custody for nearly a full 24 hours because they wanted to interview me and ask me such great questions as, do I hate Jewish people?
Wow. This extra element to the arrest, this doxing side of it, relating to a protest 3 months before the protest on the national demo, sort of proves that what was going on was not as simple as people are presenting it. Some people in the police as well. Now, I've just got a clip here from a member of the London Assembly, Zoe Garbett, asking a senior police officer about what happened. I'm just going to play that, and then I'm interested to hear what you think about what he said.
I just wanted to give you some time to reflect on the policing of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign protest on the 18th of January, because I've heard from over 150 people who attended. They report violence from the police against children, pregnant women and older people. People have been arrested, have told me that they weren't given any warnings. They were just in the wrong part of the pavement, or they were asking to leave Trafalgar Square, but then they were arrested for not leaving. They felt like the police had misled them, letting them through the lines, and then we've heard the narrative that people were forced through, but there's no evidence of that. A kettling tactic was used, which is a containment tactic that's supposed to be a last resort, and I don't feel that was proportionate to the threat, and I do have questions about Section 12 and 14. So I just wondered, within this discussion about the police and crime plan, what your reflections are on that operation.
The challenge with public order policing, as everyone in the committee will know, is that it is a balance of rights. It's a balance of people's right to protest and exercise their rights under Articles 9, 10 and 11 of the Human Rights Act, equally weighed against the balance of rights to go about your normal business, and in this case specifically, the rights to go to worship unhindered.
Yeah, but the arrests mainly happened in Whitehall and Trafalgar Square. They were nowhere near the BBC, which is the place that they were told that they couldn't go near. So it was more about how that the specific operation.
We're really talking about the police and crime plan,
okay.
Zoe.
I can answer briefly. I mean, the arrests were made for breaches of the Public Order Act and conditions that were imposed. And once conditions are imposed, then we can talk about the rights and the wrongs of whether or not they were the right conditions, and whether or not those conditions are proportionate and necessary is something that anyone can challenge by means of judicial review or otherwise. There was no such challenge. And if people then breach those conditions, they are breaking the law. And I don't know. I mean, if there is a suggestion that officers have acted too hastily, have approached people and were given no warning whatsoever, then that clearly would be something we would look at. I don't believe that's the case.
Now, Monday, do you think that this police, his name, as it says, Matt Twist, the Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, do you think he was being dishonest in his answer there?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely ridiculous what he was saying about, how in this case it was specifically about a place of worship and people having their ability to do the things as they would normally do interfered with, when we know that the pro-Palestinian movement in the UK is peaceful, it's welcoming to all, Jewish people lead the marches, but they still always say that it's anti-Semitism, that's the problem. And there has never been an issue with pro-Palestinian marches and synagogue attendance. They've been on every Saturday for a year. And it's very clearly that they're just kind of pandering to the Zionists that are all around them because they want to stay in the good favor of the Zionists and the Israelis. And I just find it very interesting how he says, I don't believe that's the case, as if he was there to witness every brutal arrest that the rest of the people witnessed. Because I'm sure if he experienced any one of those arrests, he wouldn't be saying that.
And Annie, what do you make of him saying that the arrests, he says that they were breaches of the Public Order Act? Now, you were arrested for something nothing to do with that. So
Exactly.
that is clearly not true, what he said there.
First of all, like you just mentioned, my arrest was absolutely nothing to do with breaching any condition on the day or being aggressive in any which way or form. And previous to my arrest, that's exactly what I saw around me. People that were being peaceful, children, families. In fact, I would like to point out that although I mentioned that the Zionists were put on a side road, the police had also allowed a group of them, including the notorious Nihat Gurbani and people like that, to congregate in the middle of Whitehall, in the middle of the road amongst us. They allowed one of the Zionists to leave the group, grab a woman. They did not arrest him. They just pushed him back into the group. Members of the public were saying, this is a public disorder. They're antagonizing us. Why have you allowed them to be here? And the police did not move them on for over an hour. And in fact, due to what they were doing, a friend of mine mentioned that 2 pro-Palestinian activists were arrested. So they didn't do anything to the Zionists who were allowed in our space. But apparently, people peacefully moving forward to lay down wreaths or toys for the children that have been unalived is somehow aggressive.
After we've had this national demo where people were arrested for so-called public order offences, but also people were arrested for having been doxxed, is it a good idea that the organisers negotiate with the police? What's your view on how they should talk to the police? What sort of protests would you think would work best? What do you think, Annie?
I mean, if we look at it historically over the last 16 months, the heads of PSC, Stop the War, FOA, they've done everything correctly according to what they should with the police. They've liaised, they've explained, they've given times, they've compromised. And where did we end up? We ended up at last month's demo with 77 people being arrested, where people like Chris Nineham were pushed to the ground and trampled on by the police, where Ben Jamal was made to come down to the police station. Then you look at situations where even Jeremy Corbyn had to go in and do a voluntary interview. So where has it really got us? I think it's about time that we as a movement were stronger in what we need and what we want. And I do believe personally, if you look at what Mark Rowlings is doing, you also look at Sadiq Khan, where he's now saying there's no need to protest anymore. I believe that they are trying to shut down the protests. I do believe that this is a time for organizations such as PSC to step up. I do believe we need to be stronger. And if it means that we protest and we do what we need to do, so be it. So be it. I just think that the organizers need to take a long, hard look at what they've done up to here, what they've achieved, and how they've now had a block put on them. And what do you do when a block is put on you? Do you stop or do you go through it?
What's your take on that, Monday?
I agree with Anika. I think they need to take a look at everything that happened at the last protest and also consider that these weren't the first unlawful arrests at a PSC protest. This wasn't even the first PSC protest kettle. There was one in May last year. I was there. It was insane. And I think they need to look at the fact that they've done everything they've been told to do for over a year now. They've like worked with police the whole way, and the police are making their permission smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And really, the government, I speak entirely for myself here, but the longer that you play into the hands of the police, the longer the government get to ignore you. And we're seeing it happen right here, right now. After 16 months of genocide, the government is still not doing anything. And if that's why we're protesting, if that's why PSC protests, then I think maybe they should reconsider how friendly they are with the police.